Hello and welcome back to AP World History Modern. Today we are on Unit 5.2, Day 6. I don't know why I did not have that in, but we are on Unit 5.2, Day 6, which is going to be our first of 2 days on the Haitian Revolution. All right, so Haitian Revolution. So we're always looking for causes and effects of the various revolutions in the period from 1750 to 1900, right? So always trying to make sure we're applying our skill whenever we're looking at these events. All right, so just contextualize a little bit, right? So just zoom out before we start looking at the Haitian Revolution, right? So the Haitian Revolution, we can see this here from about 1791. Until 1804, right, is happening within the midst of a series of other Atlantic revolutions, right, and just within the context of these earlier, right, kind of ideological development movements, in this time of dramatic change. So the Enlightenment, Scientific Revolution, Protestant Reformation, all of which are butting up against the age of absolutism. Right, so, the Haitian Revolution is definitely on the early side of these Atlantic revolutions. And you can definitely connect a connection or make a connection between the American Revolution and the Haitian Revolution. But the French Revolution is very easy to make some direct connections between. As they will for these later ones as well, right? All right, so French Revolution, right? Just kind of play this out with Latin America, right? There is going to be a connection between the French Revolution and literally every one of these revolutions. In the case of the French Revolution, the actual, getting into the causes and the spirit of the revolution itself. Stage 1 and stage 2, or phase 1 and phase 2, whatever how you want to break it down. So just kind of looking at this, with making those connections for the first 2 phases or stages of the French Revolution, and connecting it to the outbreak of the Haitian Revolution. It's a very easy connection to make, and we're going to do that. In the case of the other Latin American revolutions, it's more of one of those kind of, what are the effects of, kind of secondary effects of it. And so what we see with the French Revolution, with with the rest of Latin American revolutions, is it's really, you want to make a direct connection to the French Revolution. You need to get into the Peninsular Wars, right, of Napoleon, to destabilize, Spain, right, put a new monarch at the head of Spain, which then destabilizes all the Spanish colonies. All right, so that's how you would kind of make those kind of contextual connections, right, for the Latin American ones. All right, so also just to kind of make sure you see where we're going with this, right? So Latin America before these Atlantic revolutions spread their way to Latin America and the Caribbean. And then Latin America after 1830. So by 1830, many of these revolutions are going to be wrapped up, and we see here a consolidation of these viceroyalties, right? These different colonies, into newly independent countries. All right. Of course, Central America will take a little while longer before they separate as well, so they'll be united for a while. All right, so what we're going to do today to kind of start looking at the revolution, right, the Haitian Revolution, is we're going to use Khan Academy, and we're going to do a timeline activity. So in a few minutes, you're gonna go down to, so I guess it'll be right below where you are currently watching this from, and there's a Khan Academy link for the Haitian Revolution. And once you get on that link, right, once you're there, you'll see 2 parts. Right, you'll see 2 parts, and so for roughly about the time of a class time, you can go through this. I generally kind of speed things up while he's talking regular to make it go a little faster. Turn my attention to all of the craziness. Right. it takes a minute for my speakers to kind of regulate. So yeah, so I normally pick up the pace a little bit with him. There you go. Because he talks like I do, pretty slow. So I speed that up and then pause at will. But what I want you to create here when you're as you're watching this is a timeline. And I want you to break your timeline into 4 separate phases. Handwritten timeline is what I would prefer to see, but I did create a digital one just to kind of give you a look of what it should look like at the beginning. So the first few minutes of it, he's going to go through the first phase of the Haitian Revolution. And what you should get out of this should look basically like this. So you're welcome to use this as your first phase answers, and then you need to do your second, third, and fourth phases, right? So, and of course, if you're looking for the causes of the Haitian Revolution, in the case of phase 1, as you're going to see on Khan Academy, it's a direct connection. So, in 1789, the National Assembly will meet in France, and we have this Vincent Oge, who is 1/4 of African descent, 3/4 of French descent. He is a Haitian slave owner, and of course, he's literally in Paris as the revolution breaks up. So he will be in there and he'll lobby for equal rights, right? So in March of 1790, the French Revolution passes this legislation saying that all proprietors, which are business owners, right, plantation owners in his case, ought to be active citizens. Hence, he views himself obliged to be a citizen, right? And this must apply to him. So when he returns to Haiti, you're going to see him, right, demanding that these that these new laws that are being passed by the French Assembly, apply to all men, or at least him, and people like him. So he'll return and he'll kind of initiate this first stage. And he has a goal, right? Give free men of color who own land, right? So it's a very specific thing, right? That he's asking for and that he's fighting for. So February 1791, he'll eventually be executed. And if you look at the demographic breakdown, and I literally pulled every bit of this off from that, right? So you see the demographic breakdown on Saint Domingue, what becomes Haiti at the time of this first phase. All right, so this is what you should do: is you should watch this film and you should try to identify these major things. So try to sort it out for yourself and see what's significant, not significant. And don't forget there is a second part to this. So. So that should take you about the time of a normal class period to be able to run through and do this. Okay. All right. So, right. And when you are done with that, I'm gonna go through these with you, just kind of maybe give you some structure on how to build your timeline. But in class, we usually watch this for a few minutes as well afterwards. So. Maybe I'll put this up as a link for on Google Classroom. All right, but it's a Vox clip that looks at modern day borders of Haiti. Okay. All right. So your assignment would be to, if you're watching this from distance learning, is to create a timeline by using the Khan Academy. He does an excellent job. Right. It's an excellent in-depth breakdown. And definitely applying a lot of skills along the way. So I'm going to give you some of these skill connections that he does make and in theme connections, just to make sure you're picking up on it, right? So make sure you have the evidence as you go through your timeline to pick up on this, right? So phase 1, that's the Vincent Oge, and I just talked about that one. Phase 2, right? So this is from 1791 to 93. And of course, this will result in the French Assembly ending slavery or abolishing slavery in Haiti. Right, so you can actually see abolition take place there. Phase 3. So from 94 up until 1802. And Napoleon will come to power by 99 and 1800. By 1801, he's definitely fully in control, and he will change the status quo. So, the way things were in 94 are very different from 02. All right. So by the end of that period, right, you're basically ending around the time when Toussaint L'Ouverture is captured and taken back to France, where he will die in prison. So you're also ending about the time where Napoleon is given orders to reinstate slavery on the island. All right, and then phase 4, right? Phase 4 is 1802 to 04. So this is from the time that Toussaint L'Ouverture is gone, until Dessalines, right, declares victory and wins. All right, so there's a lot going on here during this phase, right? So this is going to be in your part 2 video. And I always like to point out as many times as I can when I see a human environment interaction. So when in the video, when they talk about the yellow fever weakening French forces, forcing Napoleon to reevaluate his plans, right? So, and this is something that's not in the Khan Academy, right? But just something I've read elsewhere is that Napoleon does have plans, like there is a bigger plan in place in which Haiti is simply a part of that plan. So France will negotiate with the King of Spain and acquire the Louisiana territory around the year 1800. So France had lost that, right? France had lost that over a decade before, and right. So Napoleon will through negotiation with the Spanish monarch, the Spanish king, he will get that back in 1800, and I've read that Napoleon had a plan of sending the troops into Haiti, using those troops to reinstate slavery on the island. And then once slavery had been reinstated, hence, creating this kind of, this highly profitable colony again, then those forces were to go into the Louisiana territory and kind of establish a presence there in the Louisiana territory, hence reestablishing a French empire in North America, right? So this is, this is from what I understand is what Napoleon's plan was. When the forces are annihilated by yellow fever, and the stats are in the video. They are annihilated by yellow fever. This puts Napoleon's plans completely in jeopardy. And forces Napoleon to do a complete reevaluation, unable to reinforce his troops because of the British naval blockades. Largely the French forces are left there, and Napoleon is then forced to go from having a North American colony to now scrounging to get money, hence the Louisiana Purchase. Right, so in a way, you could say that the whole manifest destiny westward expansion of the United States was caused by, or was made possible, probably a better way to put it, was made possible by the mosquito, right, and yellow fever. So, all right, so, and of course, a lot of the discussion in phase 4, of course, is the atrocities from both Rochambeau's forces. Not the same Rochambeau that you saw in your American Revolution picture, right? But his son, right? So Rochambeau's forces and Dessalines' forces. And your homework from Strayer discusses this, right? Your homework from Strayer also discusses this and how the atrocities, especially by Dessalines' forces, were communicated to the people in countries in Europe as well as in the United States. All right, so, okay, other key takeaway there, Haitian American French revolutions lead to independence movements in Latin America, right? So Haitian Revolution, once it's successful in 1804, will become, right, one of the causes then of the other Latin American revolutions. All right, so that is all for today. Sapriati.